What happens to your IRA when you pass away? You want to leave it to somebody, right? Do you know what the rules are for leaving an IRA to a beneficiary? It creates a beneficiary IRA, sometimes known as an inherited IRA. That's what we're talking about today. We're going to get into it. Sit tight. Hi, I'm Antonio Cibella with Vision Wealth Management. We're talking inherited IRAs, beneficiary IRAs today. Not something that comes along all the time, but it's something you should be aware of. And if you found this video and you're coming into an IRA that is inherited, you really need to pay attention. We're going to talk about what the rules are for distributing money from that account. So to start, an inherited IRA represents the passing of qualified money from one person to another when they pass away. Qualified money is a term you hear often. Qualified by who? Who decided that this is qualified money? The IRS. What it means is there are special rules as it pertains to that account. If it was a traditional IRA, which oftentimes that's what we're talking about here, it was money that went in pre-tax. So if you start an IRA, you get a deduction when you're putting the money in. The money grows tax deferred. It's taxed when you take the money out. If you still have a balance in that account and you pass away, all of that money has not yet been taxed. As you pass it to your beneficiaries, depending on what they do with it, they will be subject to the tax. And so the rules are different depending on where it goes. There are spousal beneficiary rules. It passes to your spouse. There are non-spousal rules. You give the money to somebody else upon your passing. They have two different sets of guidelines to talk about. That's what we're going to get into. We'll do it with story time with Antonio. Two neighbors, Bob and Jim. Bob is married to Suzanne. Jim is widowed, does not have a spouse, has one child, little Jimmy. And so Bob and Jim go on a trip somewhere sometime, and something happens to them, car accident, plane crash. The video really took a dark turn here, but they're both gone, just like that. And they've got these IRAs. They each had $500,000 in an IRA. Bob's beneficiary was his wife, Suzanne. The money goes to Suzanne. She has the ability to stretch it over her remaining life expectancy. So however long she is expected to live. This happens through an IRS table. You look it up and it gives you a factor. It says you have to take out a certain amount of your retirement assets each year. And so she's able to stretch that out over a long period of time. That can minimize the tax liability in any one year because you're just taking smaller pieces out over a long period of time. That can prolong those big tax hits from taking place. Jim, separate situation. Jim didn't have a spouse. He had his son, little Jimmy. That was who he had named as his beneficiary. The IRA passes to little Jimmy. A rule change at the end of 2019 that started at the beginning of 2020 as part of the Secure Act said that if you pass to a non-spousal beneficiary, little Jimmy, he's got 10 years to get the money out of the account. Now, it doesn't matter that he's getting the money out of the account. What you read there is he's got 10 years to pay the taxes on all of this money. He can do it each year. He can do it in a lump, but he's got to take it out within 10 years. And as he does that, if he inherited $500,000, he might be looking at $50,000+ a year of additional taxable income. That could push him into a higher tax bracket. He could end up paying more in taxes. At the end of the day, Big Jim's IRA, his $500,000 that he had saved, more of that money is going to go off to the federal government via tax because of the time frame being compressed to 10 years than it would have had he been able to stretch that out over 15, 20, 25, 30 years. So that was a big change that took place for non-spousal IRA beneficiaries. You got to get the money out faster, and depending on how many people this is going to and what the size was, it can really raise the amount of taxes that would be due on that same dollar amount versus example number one, where it could be stretched over a longer period of time. So those are the basics. There's a lot more to it than that, but we're trying to keep the video short and concise. To that end, if this is a circumstance you've come across, you've got questions about it, or if you're sitting there watching the video and you realize, hey, I'm particularly traditional tax money heavy, there are some things you can do in advance while you're still around to hopefully start to spread that money out. Roth conversions comes to mind, creating additional sources of funds to cover the tax bill would be another one. I've got some other videos on that stuff, but if you're sitting there and you're watching this and you say, hey, I'm that guy that's got all of my money in this account and I don't want to leave the tax bomb to the next generation, good time to start figuring it out. That's all for the video. I thank you for being here. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you soon.